on to our next session. So we've got Amparo Ballivian from the World Bank going next.
I'll do my intro. It's okay.
Okay.
So just to take 1 second, just to explain, we're going to do something a little bit different for Amparo's lightning talk. We're going to spend maybe half of it, maybe a little bit more, to do like a little skit. And what we're going to do is I'm going to play the role of something I once was familiar with as a World Bank consultant, talking to someone who's a minister of planning for a generic Latin American or developing country government, which Amparo will play. So.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Kaplan. Welcome to Uzbekistan. Please sit down.
Madam Minister, thank you for having me.
So, what can I help you with?
Well, as you know, we thought we would take some time together to talk about open data.
Open data. Oh, okay. So I heard about it before, but to tell you the truth, I don't really understand it. Can you please explain it to me in a way that even my grandmother would understand?
Yeah, in fact, the truth is your grandmother should never have to understand open data. In fact, if she never heard the two words together, open data, that would be fine. The thing that your grandmother should understand and experience is easier ways to finding out how much medicine should cost that she needs, or how much to sell her house for based on what the houses around her have sold for, or how much to sell her rice for at the market on a given day. Those are the things she should care about, and those things become possible because governments in particular are starting to make data more accessible to more people.
We already publish a lot of our data.
That's true, but as you know, a lot of times the information that gets published is in reports and things that, if you're lucky, people will read, but it doesn't provide that data in a way that can be used for lots of different things, and in particular, things that will have positive economic value for Urbolistan.
So are you telling me that we should provide data, for instance, to private companies for free?
That's exactly what I'm telling you, among other things.
Why? Why would the government that has put money in producing this data give it for free for private companies for their own profits? Why are you doing this to me? What have I done to you?
Well, you've done nothing but be generous by allowing me to join you, and I'd like to return that generosity by basically having the chance to talk about what becomes possible if data that the government has becomes freely available online to anybody, whether that be private companies or that to be entrepreneurs or easier access for government itself, or others that right now have no way of actually using that data for lots of new and different things. And as I said, particularly for things that might have positive economic value, which I know is important for Urbolistan.
So do you mean that if we had open data, we could increase our GDP and our employment figures?
Well, it creates the possibilities for new economic activity. And that can be for businesses who are looking to expand. That could be for investors who are looking at Urbolistan. The idea is that if data that people use to make decisions, including business decisions, was easier and more available to them, you create the possibility of new economic decisions being made that will have those kind of effects for Urbolistan.
You know, Mr. Kaplan, that may work very well in the United States where you come from, okay? But here in Uzbekistan, actually, the quality of our data is pretty bad. I mean, not even I trust it all the time.
Well, join the club. That's pretty much true of most governments, even the governments in advanced countries. Data quality, how good the data is, can it really be trusted for making decisions, is frankly a question in a lot of people's minds. Your country is not alone in that at all. But let me ask you a question back, which is this. If you're worried that the data is not good or it's not good enough, what is the fastest path to actually seeing that data have much better quality? Is it to do what's being done probably for decades, which is the person who collects it or has it, keeps it to themselves, and no one ever sees it except if they write a report, for example?
Yeah, that's true.
Or does it become more likely that data becomes better quality, cleaned up, more complete, if other people can start to see it, see what's missing, actually even maybe help you do some of that cleaning of data or filling in those data gaps so that it's not actually being borne by, that department, that group, that program all by themselves. Which is the more likely to actually move you forward in data quality? And that's a serious question to ask yourself.
You have a good point there. How much will it cost? You work for the World Bank, right?
That I do.
Yeah. So you know that the IMF and which is your cousin is imposing all these austerity measures on us and our government, and so I need to be mindful of the budget. Is this something really very expensive?
No, it doesn't have to be. A lot of times when someone asks the cost of something, the first question that's important to ask is, what's the value they're actually buying? I mean, the cost is only relative to value.
Yeah, but it may be very valuable, but if I can't afford it, I just can't afford it.
True. So the costs really are in the hands of a given government or agency itself. They can start very small and very modest if they have a very modest approach to doing this. And you're talking in the thousands of dollars. It's not something that governments as a whole, that's not a sort of, I don't want to say it's as cheap as a rounding error, but it's actually very cost efficient. And it's the kind of thing that creates the possibility of very big bang for the buck. And I'll give you one example. If in opening data you were able to catalyze just one new investment in a given sector, one new factory, one business expanding to grow its network of chains across the country or something, that value alone in economic dollars, tax receipts, and jobs, will far exceed any of the investments you're going to be making in open data.
Okay. Well, I'm afraid that was all the time that I have for you, Mr. Kaplan. Thank you very much. Please stay here. I would like you to talk with my technical team, and if I really am convinced, I'll be very happy to work with you.
Well, I'm grateful, and I hope you will stay involved in these discussions as we've experienced in a lot of governments. Leadership from the top, executive ownership, and is critical to the success of open data having impact. So I'm very grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
All right. So that is more or less to give you an idea of what's the typical conversation that the World Bank has in developing countries where we're trying to convince. Obviously, the discussion is much longer, and not all ministers are as nice as I am. But we've been making some headways. We have been supporting a lot of developing countries, including Kenya, the previous speaker. That was one of our first clients, and we keep doing so in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia, and in various countries. Can I have the next slide, please? That was the slide that was supposed to be on where we were having our skit. One more, please. Okay, just thought that it was a good idea to tell you a little bit about the Sustainable Development Goals. What are these things? I think that this audience probably doesn't know. How many how many of you, raise your hand, know what are the Sustainable Development Goals? Oh, so good. Or so actually like 20% know. So you can go back to watch your screen and whatever, because I'm going to be very, very simple here. So what are they? About a month ago, 192 countries' head of state committed to 17 Sustainable Development Goals. To give you some background, this is the second phase of something that was started in the year 2000 called the Millennium Development Goals. Millennium was an appropriate term there that we were turning the millennium. Now the key word is sustainable. Back in 2000, leaders of the world adopted 8 Millennium Development Goals. Those were broken into more detail, 21 targets, and those were further broken into 60 indicators. Now, the idea of those goals, let me just give you the first one of the Millennium Development Goals, was reduce by half extreme poverty around the world. That was achieved, believe it or not. And there were 7 others. And they were more or less achieved. Obviously, there are differences among countries, but by and large, I would say there was a big success. And so, this year, they decided to expand that. The list of goals has expanded twice as much, and the list of targets has expanded 8 times. So we had 21 targets before, now we have 169 targets. The list of indicators is going to probably expand also because they're not known yet. They haven't been only the goals and the targets have been approved. The indicators will be approved next March. What are they? Next slide, please. So some of them are very similar. We had them before, like no poverty. This time the aim is to eliminate extreme poverty by the year 2030. No hunger, improve health. This is just a very high level, as you can imagine, summary of the various, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Why am I bringing this up in the context of an open data conference is because there is a large opportunity here for open data to help with this. Even as a, different than the MDGs, the SDGs are going to apply to all countries, not just developing countries. And even rich countries, which are also data rich, have problem satisfying all the data requirements of this framework. So you can imagine the poor countries in the world, what an uphill battle they have to do it. And I think that open data is one of the tools that will help them achieve these goals. I have all the goals and the targets in a machine-readable format, which you won't find anywhere else. Unfortunately, I couldn't put the slide here, but if you come see me after this, I'll be very happy to give you the address. Thank you very much.